Welcome to Slightly Off Script, the marriage show where we remind you that marriage can be stupid good and wicked fun. I am one of your hosts, Bethany Needham, here with the most handsome man in the universe, Mr. Universe, Andy Needham.
Mr. Universe.
I just gave you the title.
Listen, we're going to be clear here that there are people that have recommended that you do powerlifting. No one has ever recommended that I enter the Mr. Universe. That has never been.
Listen, Mr. Universe is that you are like the package deal.
The package deal.
Yeah.
Well, I only need to be that for you. That's
Yeah.
all that matters.
Oh, yeah, I ain't sharing my package. You are my package.
Give me not overuse that word, please.
Yeah. I was just thinking this is
I think
going.
we've already hit beyond our limit of that.
Yeah, fair enough. Speaking of sharing, big week. Yeah,
Yes.
your mistress, she got some work done.
Context is key here.
I don't think so. We'll just move right along from the, no, just kidding. So your guitar.
The OG.
The OG.
The first love.
Yes, which I refer to as the mistress because we've basically agreed that if there is a house fire, I am on my own getting
I will
to safety.
wake you. I will point you towards the exit.
Perfect.
You can follow me out the door.
Follow you out the door as you pick up
As
the
I grab the
mistress.
guitar because the guitar has no legs.
Yeah,
And so,
that's fair.
yeah, this is my beloved Taylor 310 KCE Koa edition. Back when they used to make them with the Grover tuners and the Fishman electronics, which I know you're really into.
I can hear the listeners increasing. Ding, ding, ding,
When
ding.
I was 18 years old, I went to Guitar Gallery in Milford, New Hampshire. I don't even know if it exists anymore. It was a great little music shop. And I emptied every dollar out of my bank. I think I had $17 left after. And I spent everything on this guitar. And it's still with me to this day. I've written many songs on it. I've traveled around the country with it. And, you know, the old lady needed to have some work done.
Yeah.
So-
yeah. I actually finally feel like I have a one up on the mistress because I haven't had work done yet. So, but she needed it. She needed it.
That actually brings up another interesting trivia thing. That out of the two of us, I'm the only one who's had plastic surgery.
True.
Yeah.
On your face.
I've had,
too.
yes, I've had plastic surgery. True story. If I ever have the two truths and a lie, that is like the one to go to right
Yeah.
there.
But you're so stinking handsome, they're going to know it's true. They'll be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Me and Tom Brady, we get the same.
Same. Basically the same. No, you just had was it a lipoma removed?
Yeah, it really wasn't that
A
dramatic.
lump on your head.
Yeah.
But I have to say, my fave was this is such an Andy thing. You have this minor surgery done and you don't cancel any work. You're like, I'm having this minor surgery and then I'm getting in the car. I'm going to New York because I have to host a conference. And in your mind, you're like, this is no big deal. You barely even see it. But then the photos come out after of you on stage.
Yeah, like it was all yellowed and black and blue. Looked like we got in a fight.
Yeah, it was bad.
I don't know if I've ever told you the part of the story. So I get there, I go to it was a whole journey to like figure out what this thing was. And you kept wanting to pop this thing, which was not a pimple on my forehead, but
Oh, I wanted to
I
so
know.
bad.
So
I tried. I
this
poked
is
it
real
with
talk.
a needle.
Yeah, it was not. So anyway, I'm sitting in the chair and it was like, I think it was like somewhere like an Eastern European woman from like, I don't know if it was Croatia or somewhere in there. So very thick accent. And she comes in and they've already they have it like marked and they
Yep.
have like all the stuff, the lights, like sort of like this super bright lights. And she comes in and she's like, all right, I'm going to do it. It's going to take not much time at all. But you need to be back here in 4 days or whatever it was. It was like, because we're going to take the stitches out. And I was like, I'm going to be in Arizona.
Oh, yes.
There was a moment where I thought she was not going to do the surgery. I've already had my face numbed up. Like I am like fully in. And she's like, well, I can use the dissolving stitches, but it's more likely to leave a mark. And I was like,
I guess that's
that's what we're doing. So
Actually, it didn't leave a mark, though.
I have a little scar there. Yeah, a
now
little
that you're
scar.
saying it, I feel like for a long time there was a noticeable, and it's not nearly as noticeable.
Yeah.
I'm starting to miss the big old egg on your head, too.
I don't even know how it got there. And the doctor said that more than likely it was because I hit my head.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't remember. I don't know that maybe I hit it really hard because I don't remember that.
My favorite was all of the months that people would look at you and the moment they spotted it, but then they were awkward as to whether you
Yeah.
should be like, so what happened to your face?
Well, the worst
bro?"
was Zoom. And our house happens in the afternoon that the sunlight comes like pouring into my office. And so it was like Zoom, I don't know, like the HD camera and then the lighting. Like it was like people.
That bad boy cast a shadow.
It was pretty bad.
It was legit.
Everybody would be like, oh.
Because it literally just looked like a massive pimple on your head.
Big egg. So, yeah, that's a little interesting journey.
I don't think anyone finds it
I've
as
had some work
interesting as
done.
we do.
Yeah, it's like trivia though. No, people didn't know.
True.
I guess everybody's learning very, very random, less scandalous this week, but things about me that they didn't know. So, do you have any like confessions that you'd like to make this week?
Not publicly.
You're too smart for that.
Yeah, but maybe offline.
Okay.
I'll share.
Okay.
All right. So I'm pretty excited for our episode today.
Yeah, we've talked about doing a conversation around health when it comes to physical health. And we often talk on this podcast about the fact that being healthy as a couple, being healthy as individuals means mind, body, and soul. Like that's the way the scriptural model, Jesus talks about that. The Old Testament talks about that. And we often talk about, things that are of the mind and of the soul. But I think it can be easy as Christians to overlook the part of it that God has made us as embodied creatures. I remember there was this kind of phrase that was going around when I was growing up in the church where it was like, oh, this is just our earth suit.
Yeah.
There's this idea of like, you are a soul, you have a body. And I think that's bad theology. I think that, yes, on the other side of eternity, our bodies are not going to carry on with us. But God has given us he created a good thing in our bodies. And we get to deal with the fact that we're in a broken world with broken bodies. And as you get older, you get to experience some of that, don't you?
A little bit. Feeling that right now.
Little lifting injury.
Lifting injury we're nursing right now. So fair enough. No, I agree. And I think there's reasons behind it. I do think it can be a sensitive issue because it's definitely not simple. And so I would say as we go into this today, a couple of things I want to preface it with is we're going to talk about really our experience, some things from our own story. But there is a reality that every single human being is created uniquely. And that's even from birth, right? There's this unique creation. But then everybody has been on their own journey. So there are things that are going to be true of people that they may hear part of our story and be like, oh, well, that's nice for you. Not true for me. And I don't want it to seem like we're just making this too simplistic because there are people that have legitimate health issues and other things. Their emotional, mental health can play into physical health and all of that. So I want to be sensitive to that and acknowledge that even though we're going to talk through, and hopefully this will be a fun conversation, I also hope there'll be some good takeaways for people, maybe things that because we're kind of approaching this from basically the mistakes that I've made in this and the lessons that I've learned.
Well, similar, when we talked about mental health, we talk about we're in a broken world. We are broken people and we have bodies that are like decaying. And so part of this, the reality that we just want, like you just said it really, really well. We want to remember there are things that we cannot control.
Yeah.
There are experiences we've had. There's our history. There's things about our bodies that like we just don't have any control over. And then there are other things that is an element of stewardship. And I think people can over-index either direction.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, why don't you just do this and everything will be fine? Or there's nothing you can do about it. And we're hopefully going to try to find a more balanced approach today.
Yeah. We hope so.
I hope so. We'll see. We'll find out.
We'll find out at the end. Or with me.
You're leading it, so we know we'll be off script. So
we know it likely will not be balanced.
Yes.
So mistakes that I have made, the first one that on the list was something that I have not made this mistake once. I have made it multiple times. And so this is my confession.
Okay.
See, yeah. I do have some confessions. I have been the queen of jumping on every diet trend and being really too obsessive when it comes to food and just nutrition, all of that. You name the diet, I've probably tried it I remember the first one we ever did was South Beach diet.
Yep.
And I should be careful start naming these and offending people, but I'm just going to be real, like extreme diets.
I always love the part of the story that the guy, was it the Atkins guy? that died of a heart attack or something
Oh,
like that.
yeah, that's rough.
I don't say I love that he died of a heart attack, but I just think there's a little irony.
Yeah, why do you love that story? It's twisted, man.
Hot take.
Oh, gosh. No, but
If there's anybody from the Atkins family listening, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Yeah, for real. You need to send flowers. Yeah, so extreme diets, I would put this in the category of anything that in any kind of extreme way you're restricting. I've done a whole bunch of different ones, from low carb to no sugar to the, like when you're taking things out, when you're eating only one thing, that type of extreme. And then extreme restriction, where you're trying to eat very little calories, things of that nature. And I have yo-yoed on diets for years, really, really struggled with that. I would say the lesson, this is a pretty recent lesson that I've learned, is in, I would probably mark the last year or two where I actually feel kind of settled into, weirdly, in my 40s. I feel like I've kind of been like, I'm over it. The lesson learned is I use the KISS as my lesson learned. And usually we think of KISS as meaning to keep it simple, stupid. I was going to let you fill in the blank. Then I realized that did make it look like I was pointing at you. Sorry. Keep it simple. In this instance, we are using it as keep it simple and sustainable. And this is a lesson that I've learned in terms of my own, when I think about nutrition, because nutrition is important. The things that we choose to eat, put into our bodies, it does affect our physical health, our emotional health, all of the things. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. And this is one of those where I would say you kind of need to know yourself, because for you, it's actually different. There are things that are helpful for you that I don't necessarily do because they're not as helpful for me. And so tracking would be one of those.
I think that where I would interject in this is that in terms of simple and sustainable, the difference between trying to change everything at once. And I think there are moments in your life where you kind of like, it's almost like a repentance thing. It's like, hey, I'm using food as like an unhealthy way to cope with stress, or my control factor is too high. Like people, again, index in different directions. I think if what we're talking about and what I think we're trying to shoot for is that we are more like pulling little levers and moving things around versus like trying to like just whip the steering wheel and turn the car around 100% all at once. Does that track? I don't know how that analogy is, but that's kind of how I think of it.
No, I like it. And just, again, the sustainable being the things that we're doing, that it's not something that we're like, I can do this for 30 days. And then that's where the yo-yo comes in, right? Like, what are the things that are actually in the long run a sustainable option? And so,
but having a baseline, and then like you mentioned tracking, like for me, tracking is a lever that I can use to kind of bring things into better alignment.
Yeah.
And I don't track my food every day all the time. But if I feel like I'm getting a little bit off course, like the GPS is going in a direction or the scale's going in a direction I want it to go in, that's one of the levers that I feel like I can pull, where I'm like, hey, if I just up my intentionality and paying attention to this thing, this will help me get the car back on course. And then, so I try not to do it 100%. Some people do. That's great if it works for you. But for me, it's more of like, that's one of those levers that I can use as a corrective.
Yeah. And for me, as someone who has struggled in the past and continues, like if I go down that road, I can get too obsessive, and tracking can kind of feed that side of me. I have actually found it more helpful to, when I am trying to pull the lever, if we're use that analogy, I pick kind of two focus points. And so me, that's been protein and water. So those are two things that I just focus on, making sure I'm getting enough protein every single day and making sure that I'm drinking enough water. And that's not that all I do is eat protein and drink water. There's other things. I just don't. I
pay attention to those things.
Yeah,
that's your dashboard.
Exactly.
Like, this is what I'm looking at. Yep.
And it helps me to not stay. For me, it's been helpful to not be obsessive. And then the only other thing I would say to simplify for me, and this has proven to be sustainable, is I call it my lunchbox meal plan, because I do work full time and I have a lunchbox that's larger in size, and I literally plan out my meals. So I fill my lunchbox with what I need to eat that day to make sure whatever is in there has enough protein. And I also have a large water bottle to make sure I have enough water. And that's how I do it. I fill it up at the beginning of the day, and it's good accountability for me. If I get home from work and I open that box and it's still full of food, then okay, I need to do better at getting food in me. Or vice versa, if I'm pounding through it and normally I'm not still hungry, but it kind of helps me make sure that I'm eating the right amount of food during the day. So that's sort of those are my KISS methods.
Yeah. And I think where we learn from each other is like, I don't do the water thing, but I do really pay attention more to on the protein side. And I've learned a lot from you on that. So that's been a nice learning.
Yeah. Another big mistake that I have made along the way, and this ties into, it's been a nutritional mistake, but not addressing the root cause of things. And what I mean by that is, for me, my physical health, if I start to feel like the scale's going up or whatever, something's off, I have too often jumped after, like, okay, I just need to lose weight. Like, I need the scale to go back down, and not really taken the time to figure out what is actually going on. And what's
the why?
Yeah, what's the why behind it? And so I thought about, there's kind of three major things for me in my life that I look at right now. If I start to just not feel good or something feels off with my physical health, I ask the questions about, as a woman at my age, where are my hormones at, which is something I'm working on very intentionally right now, is leveling those out. What is my sleep like right now? Am I getting good sleep? Because rest is huge. And then my stress levels, is being honest about, hey, is there other things going on that are actually affecting my physical health? And addressing those things before I jump to, I got to get on the treadmill for an hour, or I got to eat less, or because sometimes it's honestly, I have seen the scale move and also just not feel good because I'm just walking through something. It's just an unusually stressful time and my body's responding to that. And actually what I need is not more treadmill time. It's more rest. Like, my body's tired.
So you mentioned hormones. I mean, that could be a whole
It could be its own podcast.
However,
episode.
I think, not being something that I have thought about or experienced much, can you just give like a real simple piece about like how you kind of came to think, oh, this is something I need to work on, and then kind of what you've done in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I did mention it earlier, but I'll talk about it again. I found a functional medicine doctor recently. I did that because I was starting to experience physical symptoms, that the more I was studying, reading, listening to podcasts around this, a lot of messaging was going towards, hey, at my age, in my early 40s, these symptoms align a lot with some hormone imbalance. And so I tried to talk to my primary care about it, and kind of felt like, well, I didn't feel like it. Literally was like, man, you don't need to worry about that. You're still young. And I am young. Like, I'm not going through menopause, but
so young.
I'm too young for menopause, but not too young to start experiencing perimenopause and sort of early signs of that. And so I went and saw this other doctor, felt like she really actually listened to me and made the investment to actually test my hormones, which is a whole thing. And it was a crazy cool experience. Honestly, going back, looking at the results, seeing data that backed up what I was feeling, she's like, yeah, absolutely. You're feeling this, you're experiencing this, because look at these numbers. There was one number that was so far off from what it should be. And so I'm still in the early phases of it, but all it meant for me was I have 3 supplements that I take right now to kind of help level those out, and I go back in 6 weeks and reevaluate. But that was kind of a huge one for me, is a lot of the physical symptoms I was experiencing was hormonal and needed help. It wasn't just something that was like once a month hormonal, like we needed some assistance.
Yeah, I haven't gone down that road, but I had my physical recently, and we've been in the throes of winter. And I think like another thing that kind of with addressing the root is that like being honest with yourself about how you're feeling. Like, we've had some good conversations the last couple of weeks where it's like we haven't felt like I will speak for myself. I haven't felt the worst of like seasonal depression, but I've had days when I kind of have just felt that malaise or that melancholy. And one is just like speaking that and just saying like, I think that's one thing that we can support each other in, is just to be able to check in and even, hey, like I'm just kind of feeling. But when I was talking to my doctor, I do take a small, so, vitamin C. I take like a multivitamin. And, he was saying like research is a little mixed on how effective, like some people think those things are really effective, others aren't. But he did say like vitamin D, especially if you live in the Northeast, he's like, pretty much if we test anybody, they're going to be low on that, to like stupid low. And you can't really overdose on it. So I think I started that during the pandemic, just an immune system thing, because without getting a lot of sunshine. Yeah. So I think that was like one of those things that I'm like, well, this is easy to do and just make it part of my routine. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Only because I feel like this one ties a little bit into what we've been talking about. I'm going to jump around on this. I think one of the mistakes that I have made in the past and that I'm trying to learn from is investing poorly in my health versus investing well. And what I mean by that is the poor investments being the only money that I was really willing or forced to spend was when I needed to go to the doctor because something was wrong physically, and it was a response to that. Or again, spending money on trend diets to try and quickly lose weight or get to a certain number on the scale. And then medications, needing to go on a lot of medications to try and chase physical symptoms that I was having, rather than, again, going to the root of what is actually going on. And I'm making this shift into thinking about what are kind of proactive investments. And so one of those is, honestly, I've thought about gym memberships differently. Like we've mentioned, you and I go to very different gyms, and there's cost to the gyms, like a monthly cost. And it could be easy to be like, oh, that is way too much money. Like I could spend that money somewhere else. But then I'm like, well, I could spend this once a month, monthly fee and invest in good health, or this same money could end up going towards medication and doctors and everything else because I'm not taking care of myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because my perspective has changed a lot on this as well, because I was really never a gym person. I mean, I would go with you occasionally, but I never loved like just going to a gym with like, treadmills and weights and kind of the classic, there's obviously a spectrum of styles, but like the classic, just go do your own thing gym. Mm-hmm. And yeah, when I turned 39, because we're just, I'm a year from 40. So this is, we're going back 4 years now, but I was like, I think I need to be more intentional about this. And so one thing I appreciate, and this is one thing that you have supported me in, is that you were willing to be like, hey, I was going to try Orange Theory. And I was like, would you mind trying this with me? And you did it for probably longer than you even were super interested in it, but you were willing to kind of, at first we were doing it like 5 a.m. I mean, we were getting up because our kids were at a different age at that time. And that was one way that you kind of said, hey, this matters to you. I'm going to show up for you. Now, eventually, once I kind of like was my thing, you're like, peace out. Like, I don't like cardio.
Yeah. There's way too much cardio involved here.
And for me, it's one of the biggest sort of individual expenses that's like just for me that we have in our entire budget. But that has actually been something that has forced me to say like, okay, if I'm going to invest in a premium gym, then for me, my rule of thumb is I have to go at least 15 times a month, and my goal is 20 times a month. And I've been very consistent with that. Now, I've also had some injuries. If I were to look at my medical expenses last year, the thing for me was trying to chase down these injuries that really did like literally slow me down because I couldn't run. Yep. Tying into what you just said is like, well, would I rather have to be chasing down solving an injury or trying to solve a problem like high blood pressure or like my heart not being healthy or that kind of stuff? And so you kind of get to, in some ways, like pick your risk here.
Yeah.
And I think that it's been a better stewardship. And because of that injury, I'm not setting PRs. I honestly am not even at my ideal weight, but over the last like 3 or 4 months, I've been able to, like even in the last 2 weeks, I've slowly started to ratchet back up my intensity, but I'm just trying to just keep showing up.
Yeah. No, and it's been cool to watch your journey in that too, because it's a big deal. And you're right. I see a lot of not memes, but like things on social media where there's like everything is hard. You got to choose your hard.
Choose your hard. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
and I think in a lot of ways that's it. And to me, the investment, like you say that your gym membership is just for you, but ultimately that investment impacts our entire family because what it does for your mental health and physical health and everything else, it bubbles over. Like it's been so good for you. And I don't care if you're over your normal weight. I think you're fine. I'm just saying. But no, I just think those investments, and I said it before, but that was for me, I had thought about going to a different kind of doctor. I had thought about like hormone testing for a long time. And my big holdup was it's going to cost money. And which is so funny when I think about it right now, but I held off for a long time because I'm like, oh, I don't know that I want to spend money on that. And to be totally candid, I sort of sat with these symptoms for a couple of years before I was like, you know what? At this point, I'm ready to make the investment. And now I laugh because I'm like, one, I actually found a doctor that our insurance covered. So it wasn't even as bad as I had built it up in my mind. But there still was, like, doing the hormone test was an investment.
I don't think it was what you feared, but there was an investment there. And it's been interesting because even we had to change health insurance in the middle of this. And based on you were kind of already on the runway with this, like we made a few choices. And again, it was pretty close in expense, but we were able to make some choices that were able to help with that. And so this is not like throw caution into the wind, like just because people spend, how many people bought Peloton bikes during the pandemic. If you have one you want to sell cheap, we would be happy to buy it from you. But
that is now a clothes rack.
Yeah. I think that the dangerous way to do it, just like the crash diet, the crash workout thing, where it's like, I'm going to buy all new stuff. I'm going to do this, and this.
Oh, yeah.
The fitness program that's the best for you is the one that you'll actually consistently do over the long haul. And so figuring out what that is. And some people really like variety. They like doing a program for 8 weeks and then changing. Some people like going to do powerlifting. Other people enjoy the more cardio or doing races. Like, I mean, my brother-in-law does ultra marathons. My sister does not do ultra marathons, so you just figure out what works for you and then do that thing. Yeah.
And that was one of the mistakes that I made for a long time, was trying to do someone else's plan.
Yeah.
Is you look at somebody and it's usually that you see their fitness level or whatever and you're like, I want that. And then you just try and mimic what they're doing. And
what's the secret? Crack the code.
Yeah. Like that there's some big secret and a code to crack. And instead, I've had to come to this place of, first of all, knowing who I am, who has God created me to be, and finding the spaces that I actually enjoy. Like there is fitness that I enjoy doing, and Orange Theory is not it, but again, for you it is. And so we've had to come to this place where we go to different gyms. We do not work out. Some couples do, and that's great. But it's for us, it works because I stick to my workout. It's something that for me, it works for me, and what you do works for you.
Well, it can be a dangerous game if you're trying to, like, absolute optimization is not possible. It's funny. I was talking to a guy at the gym today. He was coming in as I was leaving, someone that I work out with oftentimes. We're in the same class. With Orange Theory, you do the first block. Well, one block, half the hour, you're typically on the treadmill. The nicest treadmills ever. They're so nice. And then the other block, you're typically doing some type of floor exercises, free weights, TRX, body weight, rower. And he's like, oh, did you start on the treadmill? I said, I like to start on the treadmill because my joke is like, I want to eat my vegetables first because I just don't want to have that hanging over me. And he's like, yeah, I used to do that, but I was reading that like it's more optimized to start with the lifting and then finish with the cardio. And I was like, you're probably right, but it just doesn't work for me. Like it just, I'm like, so that whatever small percentage of increase that would actually do, I think that's where like you really do have to balance the principles that are good with what you'll actually do.
Yeah. And that honestly applies to so many things that we've talked through, but I don't know if I could boil it down to a specific mistake I've made, but I think this is a common mistake, is we are so inundated with so much information that we get overwhelmed and we make it too complicated. And we're trying to like parse out these teeny little, like exactly what you just said. And when you actually, and I'm not smart enough to know the science and the percentages, but if we could sit down with the percentage difference that these things really make, and you're like, it really isn't worth, like these debates will be had forever. Is it fasted cardio?
Yeah.
Is it, should you be fed before you lift? Should you do cardio first? Should you do lifting after? Should you lift high reps, slow set?
It's like
whatever.
finance though. Like you can have all these ways of like investing that are going to like maximize your returns. But in the end, if you just save consistently over time with a decent interest rate, you're going to do just fine. So like we over index on that, trying to like find the perfect way to do it.
And I would throw that KISS back in there.
Yeah.
Keep it simple and sustainable in everything, not just nutrition, but what does that look like for exercise for you? I would caution you against the TikTok trends and turning every workout into a video you saw somebody trying something, and just keep it simple and something that you can at some level enjoy. Now, I'm going to be honest. Most things, it's going to take you time to figure that out, because if you go from not being physically active.
Oh, your first 30 days are going to suck. It doesn't matter.
It's going to be miserable.
Yeah. Running, lifting, whatever it is, like it's going to be not fun. I do think for a lot of women, they're afraid of the idea of lifting. And so what would you say, just to kind of crack the ice for somebody who, like, there's a fear, like, it's funny because like we go from this thing where we're like, we're not happy with our bodies. And then we're like, well, I don't want to be too ripped.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Oh gosh. Hide the soapbox for me.
Okay.
I had this moment very recently where I was talking to a woman, and she had found out that I go to the gym.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, you go to the gym in the mornings. And in particular, the gym that I go to, she had found out. And she's like, well, I thought about it, but I forget how she worded it. Literally it was, but do they have any women's equipment there? And I was like, okay, well, define for me what you mean by women's equipment, because they have, like, I like to power lift. And then she's like, you power lift, like you lift the weights like the guys lift? And I was like, well, yeah, because it's not the guys' weights, like it's just weights. And so we ended up having this conversation where she said her concern, which is, I've heard it so many times at this point, it doesn't surprise me, but she's like, I'm trying to lose weight. I'm not trying to look bigger. And so my response was just, I'll be honest, I'm not on a weight loss journey right now. I am on I want to be strong journey. And I was like, but here's what I'll also tell you is part of the conversation. I said, you looked at me and said, what do you do to have your physique? Because if you look at me, I don't look like, I think what women
strong,
are afraid
I
to.
understand, yeah.
And I was like, I look like this and I lift heavy weights.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the idea that you're going to lift heavy weights and bulk up to the, I was like, what it would require for that to happen in unnatural methods and things you would have to take. I was like, there's just this a lie that cannot seem to get uprooted with women. Now, I will say this, there's a couple of things. I do think that some gyms, the weights area can be intimidating for women because there are a lot of men.
It's a culture thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I will also tell you that I go to a bro gym, and this is not across the board. I will be the first to acknowledge that there are some bros that are just not the people you probably want to hang around and lift around. But there are also some of those, I joke that the ones that look the biggest and the scariest are the squishiest on the inside. Like, there's a lot of just really nice people at the gym that would cheer you on. Some of my closest friends are these guys and women lifters from the gym that if you just approach them in a dark alley, you might be scared, but they're just the nicest. And they're very a supportive kind of community. And in terms of the exercises themselves, I would tell women, do some of your own research on this, because you might be surprised at what actually happens to your body when you lift weights versus just living on a treadmill or a Stairmaster or whatever. I'm a huge proponent of women as you age. This isn't just something that might be a good idea. Like, it is actually something that all of us should be doing, is not lifting baby weights, but lifting real weight.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I really love about the gym I go to is that there's people there that are in like pristine fitness.
Yep.
At all ages, like 20, 34. There's some, people that are older. You're like, well, whatever you're doing, like, again, like, just tell me what you're eating. But then there are people at my gym who they just come and they walk on the treadmill every single day. They just show up and at it, and they have ups and downs. I think that intimidation factor, I mean, that was what it was for me. That's where like you did support me in that, because there was an intimidation factor for me getting into a gym. And that is a way that you can support one another. Again, even if it's not for the long haul, it's not like, let's go to the gym together every day until Jesus gets back. But like, hey, if you are into this, like I'm willing to enter into it and help try it out. There's a spectrum. We know couples that like work out together every day. And there's others that are like us that have very different styles.
I will say one of the mistakes that I have made in the past, and this has been another more recent development in terms of a lesson learned, is when it comes to physical fitness and exercise, is for a long time, I had a pattern of overworking my body and really abusing it and undervaluing just shorter intentional workouts. And I think sometimes people get overwhelmed and they think it's that all or nothing mentality of like, I just don't have time to go to the gym every day and spend an hour or whatever. And especially the recent coaching that I've gotten, which I'm experiencing the benefits, like I'm feeling this in my own body, is they're like, listen, if you can lift 2 times a week, that's really kind of ideal for like basic, really good health. Now, you're not going to be a bodybuilding competitor doing that, but I would assume that's not what we're all chasing. No. However, just building muscle, it doesn't even have to be 3, 4, 5 times. Yeah. And so kind of recognizing that less can be more when it comes to exercise. And that falls back into know your season of life, know who you are, find the things that work. Don't feel like, well, I don't have 7 days a week to exercise. Most people, I'm pretty sure twice a week, you can carve out an hour and you can break that down 15 minutes a day. Like those things actually do move the needle.
It's hard this time of year, but honestly, like when we are able, going for walks is a huge, huge thing. And it's a great time for us together. The thing on the other side of it for me, I went through, like I was going to the gym, like I said, like 20 times a month, which is, 4 or 5 times a week. I got injured. And I had to have some real relearning because the difficulty for me, there was 2 parts of it. One was the not being able to do what I was able to do before. But there is the part of it for me, it was like 1 hour a day without my phone, where I'm just like a mental health part. What I had to relearn, or there was some unlearning, what I've really come to is I can go to the gym as many days a week as I want to, but every 2 or 3 days, it has to be like a rest-ish kind of a day. So it's either a day off or it's a day that I go and I just walk at the gym and I don't push. And that has been probably something that should not have been a revelation to me, but for me was a hard one to learn.
Well, and it ties into one of the other ones I thought through, which was the difference between abusing our bodies and hating. Like there is a unhealthy way to exercise where it's out of hatred towards your body. Like I hate what this is and I'm going to beat it out of myself, versus actually caring for our bodies and in a lot of ways using exercise as a way to show gratitude to God for these bodies that he's given us and showing grace towards them too.
Yeah. And I think we need to do that for one another as a couple. We've had plenty of times when like one of us has been doing really well in this area and the other person is not. And that's a dynamic. Sometimes people deal with that for long periods of time. If there's, other factors in their marriage where one person, I mean, obviously like childbirth is a huge, that's a very difficult, long season, depending how many children you have. Like those are real factors. For me, like one of the compacting factors, I think, I had an injury, but then I also went through a year where I was in job transition and stress was a reality. And that's, I think, like giving myself grace that like, oh, it's not surprising that you probably weren't eating quite as disciplined last year.
Yeah.
It doesn't give me permission to abuse my body. And I need to be careful about that. But it is something where I can give myself grace.
Yeah. Because I'm telling you now from experience, heaping shame in addition to all of that is not going to help you actually care for
Ben
yourself.
And Jerry will be your therapist very soon.
Yeah, for real. I obviously very much identify with that because for me, the years that I was having babies were also some of the darkest for my mental health. I was young. We were going through a lot. Our marriage wasn't necessarily in the best of place. And so for me, I gained a lot of weight with babies. I was not the picture of health. And it was not till after having Mercy and it was going to the doctor for my mental health that they suggested have you ever thought about going to a gym? And it's the first time I ever stepped foot into a gym was probably a year and a half after Mercy was born. And I still remember going in, and the trainer that was there who was going to just show me around. I remember the anxiety, like even as I'm saying this, I can feel it in me. The anxiety I felt. I remember this feeling of like, I don't belong with it.
I'm an idiot. I don't belong here. I don't have the right body. Yeah, all those
I'm
things.
looking at all these people, and Glenn was his name. Shout out to Glenn. He walked me into the room, and I remember it was like he knew what I was feeling. Like he could feel it off me, and he just leans over, and it was this moment that I will mark as like this was a shift. Like he literally changed my life in this moment, because he leaned over. He's like, I just want you to know that guy over there, and he was pointing at, and this wasn't to shame the guy, but this guy was like killing it on the machine. He's dripping sweat. He's like, muscles bulging. And he's like, you don't have to do that to be healthy.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to show you how to do what you can do, and you're going to feel like a million times better. And he walked me into the weight room, and he introduced me to, I want to say it was the machines to start.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of a journey that has been now, I mean, how old is our daughter? That many years later.
It's a great point, because really what you're saying is like, what's the goal?
Yeah.
Because I think that, again, this ideal of like a bodybuilder or like that perfect figure, people who do that either have uncommon discipline or spend an inordinate amount of their energy and effort on that in a way that might even be, like you said, unhealthy.
Yeah.
What is your ideal? Like, to me, it's just like moving my body every day. Having heart health is huge. Knowing your family history of health, like it's an important thing to think about. And then the interesting thing as a couple and a dynamic, and I've told you this before, but there have been times when you've done the crash diet or you've lost a ton of weight and like been at your lowest weight. And I've told you, I'm like, that's not the most attractive that I find you. Like, it feels a little unhealthy.
Yeah. Which it was. So that was fair. You weren't shaming me. The body dysmorphia is real.
Let our spouse have permission to like speak into that in some ways. We need to do that with grace too, because that could be a place where we could obviously do a lot of damage as well. But that's at its best, marriage when it's wicked good and super fun. Yeah. It's a good thing.
And it's a good tie over, because I thought, how do we wrap up an episode? We're talking about all this physical health. Yeah. And I just thought, to be honest, there are benefits to our marriage when we care for our bodies. Like, it actually does flow into the marriage. It's actually given us more fun together activities, from hiking. We love to go on walks together. And we said it, we don't normally go to the gym together. Every once in a while we will, but for the most part, but we do love to ski together. Like, they're physically active things we honestly wouldn't be able to do, except that we stay active throughout the year. Yep. So I personally love that benefit. The next one, which is a big one, this is not just marriage, but life, but for sure in our marriage, when we are taking care of our bodies, it does affect our moods, our energy levels, our emotions. Like, I know for me, if I'm not caring for myself physically, I just don't feel good. Honestly, when we get back from the gym, we like meet back at the house. I feel like we're both just in a really good frame of mind, where it's very, very helpful in that department. And then the last, which I'm going to say it because everyone will think it, there is a confidence level that comes, outside, but also inside the bedroom. Mm-hmm. So I think that is a benefit.
Yeah. We're going to do some episodes eventually of talking more about intimacy, but we talk about how like having that place of grace and safety where shame does not exist is like that. We're trying to, as best we can, create that sort of Eden adjacent kind of reality. And there are very few things in you that are more attractive than confidence, not like an arrogance. And that's true of your smile when you talk to a stranger, and it's true for one another in the way that you show up for things. And so I would just say yes and amen.
Yeah. Yes and amen. I love it.
That's great.
Well, yeah. And I encourage people who are listening to just think about, maybe they're listening and they're like, I'm on point with my physical health. Maybe there's sort of this, I really don't feel good right now. And to kind of think through, what are those, again, KISS, keep it simple and sustainable. What are simple things, maybe little lever shifts that you can make? And momentum is an amazing thing with your health. As you start to slowly feel better, it does build. If you let it, it will start to build
Absolutely.
one thing on the next.
Well, and I've said it in other episodes, but that this is an area where that could not be more true, that we underestimate what we can do in a long period of time. We overestimate a short period of time. So if you can say like measuring in 60 days or 6 months or 6 years, where do you want to be? And just start to move in those directions. And again, we talked about this a little bit today, but seasonal life makes a big difference in this. Like for me, when the kids were home and we were shuttling them to school or having to figure out who's taking what car, like I had to get up even earlier to be able to go to the gym because I had to be home in time for X, Y, and Z. And so now it's a little bit easier, to be honest with you, just because of the season of life that we're in. So have grace in that. And I would just say this is mind, body, and soul. Like this is one of the areas that is an area of stewardship in our lives. And just like everything, God has called us to be good stewards. And he's also said grace is abundant.
Yes. Amen. And just remember in the process, it's not about even the changing your body, hating your body, abusing your body. Like this really is about caring for this body that God's given us. I heard someone say the other day, I thought it was a really interesting practice, that one of the things that they practice is, like, for instance, if you're at the gym and you're doing a bicep curl, is actually praying as you're doing that a prayer of thanks. Thank you, God, for this arm that you've given me.
I often pray like, Lord, please let me get this over with as quickly as
Whatever the prayer is, it can really increase your prayer life.
Encourage our listeners, if there's something that we talked about that sparked an idea or there's something that you want to share in the space or a question, send those in to us. We'd love to get your feedback or other areas of conversation that you feel like would be good for us to cover in the podcast. It's been a real gift. And please do give us those reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify in particular. That makes a big difference. Subscribe on YouTube. And anything else you want to say before we go today?
No, that's all I got.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.